have the soldering iron fired up here. I'm getting ready to do what's needed to get set up for the probe replacement experiment. We've had some probe anomalies registering temperatures in the many thousands of degrees Celsius while trying to monitor a soil moisture level and temperature. And so we're going to try a couple of replacement probes. These are identical to the ones we've been using, to see if it's a characteristic of these probes or just of the one that we've been using. So I found some more reasonably sized heat shrinks. So after we solder the wires from the plug, the I2C plug that's already attached to the probe that has already been sprayed with polyurethane, we'll solder those together. We'll use these smaller heat shrink tubings trimmed to appropriate size to cover up those connections. And then we'll slide this whole larger heat shrink tube over the end of the probe here and over all of that. Hopefully shrink it down and cover that all up. So both of these have these connectors that are intended for use with tail lights and brake lights that you're connecting from your trailer to your car. And so we've got these Mayo pins that we're going to be connecting up to the probes, and then here is the female receptacle along with a cap to cover up everything, and it's supposedly waterproof, and there's a gasket there that should help. Maybe we'll cover that also with some of the coax putty. And then that will connect to the cable coming out of the satellite transceiver, which is right here. And the original probe is connected here. Have quite a long piece of wire, cable rather, connecting the probe that we originally hooked up here. And one possible problem here is that this is an I2C bus designed so that multiple devices could be attached to it, and the program in the Feather microcontroller in the satellite transceiver could call up those devices individually and communicate with them. But this was a bus that was designed for use in a desktop computer rather than with lengthy probes going to soil that you're trying to measure moisture from, and so the length of the cable is an issue, and I'm basically going to cut it in half. I'm going to cut it right here where I'm holding it and reduce the length of it also. It's still rather long, but only half as long as it is now. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to take a pair of wire cutters here and snip this right here. And so there's the original probe with its all of its coax putty covering up all of the electronics and electrical connections, and then all covered with electrical tape. And we'll be trimming this cable also so that we can check the original one again eventually to make sure that it wasn't just the probe length, the cable length that was causing the issue of the walking on the sun 16,000 plus degrees Celsius readings that we would get outside when the temperatures dropped a few degrees below freezing. So that's going to be happening again in the next few nights, and so we want to get all this ready so we can have it set up to check and see if either of these other probes or maybe both give readings like that also. So a lot of soldering to do here, and heat shrink tubing to shrink onto the cables and the conductors inside. So we'll get busy with that, and we got our soldering station up to 650 degrees now, so we're ready to go. You're seeing the flashing green heartbeat every 5 seconds from the Eval Kit, the Swarm Eval Kit. Oh, there's a blue light. The blue light means that we're in communication with a satellite. Apparently my having installed a new cable for the probe attachment didn't wind up shorting anything out in the electronics box, and things are still working. We got a GPS fix, so there are no blinking red lights. The heartbeat is beating every 5 seconds, and oh, there it goes again. We see another communication with the satellite passing overhead. So we did see one report from today's setup earlier from about 7:30 p.m. and it looked like reasonable values both for the moisture level and for the temperature. So it seems that things are working. The new probe is working normally so far, and the low temperature tonight is forecast to be 22 degrees. So that's well past the low temperature that seems to be required for these walking on the sun episodes, which usually happens starting, say, around maybe 27 degrees. So we should get there and find out if this new probe is going to behave the same way as the previous one did and give us reports of 16,000 plus degrees Celsius when the temperature is actually below freezing. So we'll see. Well, here are the results from the old probe, the original probe, all along here, including this sunwalk, this kind of interesting three-legged sunwalk that had one data point right here that was at a normal sort of temperature, and then it immediately took off again. The next hour's reading to 16,000 plus degrees Celsius. Okay, then on the 18th, let's see, we'll get the crosshairs here and find the first reading of the new probe. I attached the new probe and sort of absent-mindedly shoved it into the large concrete planter out in front of my house, and just anxious to test to make sure that I hadn't shorted anything out in replacing the cable. And so on the evening of the 18th, March 18th, at just about 7:30, this was the first reading that the new probe took, and its moisture reading was comparable to the moisture reading of the previous probe, but the original probe was in the paper cup with potting soil in it, not in the large concrete planter. So I thought of that and then rushed out before I went to bed and stuck the probe into the paper cup with potting soil in it so that it would be a more comparable reading to the original probe's readings, as far as, I mean, a more comparable test as to whether or not it would produce sun walking temperatures at a night where the actual temperature was considerably below freezing. The low was around 24, I guess, 24 degrees. And so that when I had shifted the probe from the concrete planter to the paper cup, its reading immediately dropped. The moisture reading, the temperature just continued declining as it was getting colder and colder. but the moisture readings are kind of interesting. They're considerably lower than the original probe's readings were. They are in the vicinity of 600 to 700, and they are much more in line with the readings that I'm getting from the identical probe to this one, only inside. This is the Peace Lily moisture level probe that's sticking in the Peace Lily by our picture window, and it just slowly declines from somewhere above 600 down to somewhere closer to, well, I guess around 640, and then here's a watering event, and then it just begins declining again. So it has a pretty limited range of somewhere between 600 and 700, and that's more the value that we're getting out of this replacement probe. So that's probably a good thing too. And then during the night, the night of the 18th and morning of the 19th, that's all in here. There's no walk on the sun, even though the temperature got down to 24 degrees. So the original probe definitely would have taken another walk on the sun. Over here, there was a night when it didn't take a walk on the sun, but the original probe, but the temperature was above freezing. So, yeah. And then, of course, as the sun moves around our house and the shines directly on the probe, the temperature probe gives ridiculous readings, but not 16,000 degrees Celsius. Okay, and the same thing happened today. It was a very sunny day here, and the temperature probe gave a artificially high reading when it was in the sun. Moisture reading seemingly more normal. So it seems fairly clear to me that something about the original probe setup was not right. It's possible it was a defective probe. It's also possible that I damaged it in trying to install that original huge marine grade heat sink on it that I wasn't able to melt. I was afraid that I would damage the probe if I continued trying to shrink the heat shrink tubing, and I think I probably I did damage it probably. But there's also the possibility that it was too long of a cable stretching from that probe to the satellite transceiver, and so just now I went outside and I replaced the replacement probe back with the original one with this shorter cable length, and we'll see tonight when it's supposed to get down around 19 if it still takes a walk on the sun tonight. So that will be the final portion of this experiment. So that's it for now.